access to the material. As you can see here, you've got, I should have numbered them rather than just, oops. Anyway, here's one, but let me just number them because it may be easier to make reference to them. So there's 8 articles. The idea is pick one each. Let's make sure you pick a different one each. So tell us which one you're picking. Have a quick read and then tell us about it. Which one would you like to pick? Danny.
You're not sharing. Are they on the slide?
Sorry. I am seeing it, but I am not sharing it with you. So how can you guess what I'm talking about? And I didn't share what I told you about the class log either, which I'll go back over it. When you go to the class log, page 2 of the class log has a summary of how many answers, how many entries each person has. Anyway, so slide, what number is it? 107 contains these 8 articles. They're all from the Guardian newspaper. I picked one source so that we wouldn't have, too many different styles or anything, but they're all language-related articles from the last year or so. So just have a read and decide which one you would be interested in picking up and looking at. And they're very short, as I say. Well, they may not look it, but they are. They're like short newspaper articles. So when you have a decision, let us know.
I think I will choose the first one because I don't know what Croydon accent is, so I would like to learn more about that.
Okay.
I'd like to pick the last one.
Okay.
Bring back the
Okay, so first and last. So
we like extremes.
Extremes. You have extremists, in fact. Okay, well, go to the articles, click on the link, and have a quick read, and then just tell the rest of us what the articles are about, what the main ideas are, and how they connect to the things that we've been talking about. I'm here just in case you have any doubts while you're reading it. Did you just hear that, or was it okay? No,
What?
you didn't hear anything. No, okay.
No.
Okay, good. I'm muted so that you don't get interruptions. Sorry.
I'm done.
Wonderful. Shall I stop presenting and maybe you can present your own article when you talk about it? Who wants to go first?
I can if you like. It's like in order. I have to find it because I was reading it on my other computer, so I'm going to search for it.
Take it easy.
So it was a great article. So I will if you have time, you should read it because it's
Okay, I'm
really
going to
really
read it.
interesting. It's really interesting. It has so many things. Like, wait a minute. How do I present? Because I have the new interface.
You have to go to the square with the little arrow.
And I have to say una ventana, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There. Okay. So there, but I don't see you.
Yes, you will. You will. No, you shared la pantalla, which is the top one. You should share una ventana, which is the middle one. When you click,
I clicked yeah, una ventana, but Opera. The thing is that I'm using Opera. Could be that the problem?
Could be.
Yeah.
You're not using Chrome, you mean?
No. Let me see. Una pestaña. There. Okay. See? Now?
Yeah, there it is.
Do you see? Okay.
Yeah,
well, so this article is about the experiences of, as it says here, foreign correspondents of the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about different languages. Like, for example, this first reporter talks about Chinese and her experience with Chinese and where she learned it. That, as it says here, she grew up in a Chinese-speaking household. So for her, Mandarin was like supernatural. And when she had to interview people in this pandemic, it was like a bridge for her to understand and to emphasize, not to feel empathy for the other person. So it was super helpful for her. And I don't know if it was on this article, not on this article, but in this, that it says that someone here, they said one of her colleagues knew the dialect of Wuhan. So he or she was able to communicate with the people there, and they could get some information. So how important knowing even the dialects is. And then this reporter, Tom Phillips, he started learning Brazilian Portuguese because he liked the music and the Brazilian music. And so he started learning that. And then it was a tool for him to decipher Bolsonaro's language or phrases, as it says here. I had to look for the word mangler. I didn't know what mangler was because he mentioned Bolsonaro as a mangler there, a notorious mangler of the language of as it pronounced. And it mentions how Bolsonaro uses the word and what it means. And I found that really, really interesting. And then
so that means he not only had to understand what Bolsonaro meant, but he also had to produce translations because he had to include them in his pieces, right?
Exactly. And then I I don't remember about this one. About Europe correspondence. This was about French, I think. Just give me 1 second because I don't remember about this particular case. I think that was it here that here in this case I highlighted this phrase that it says that fascination for languages and the job of journalism both open doors, reveal unexpected worlds, and comfort an enviable status of somehow being both participant and observer. And I thought of the parallel of languages as being bridges, not only as something that it can open doors, right? And then someone who started learning Russian, and he already spoke, or she, no, look, he already spoke German, and he spent 3 or 4 years in Moscow, and he was pretty fluent, as it says here. After 4 years in Moscow, he was pretty fluent. And when I read this story, I was thinking about the presentation that I had to make, and if age influences how we acquire a second language. And here, well, it proves that he was immersed in this context, right, where he had to use the language, and he was really interested in learning it. And well, he had a background on German, but he had no background on Russian, but he did it anyway. He was
in Russian. In
Yes.
Russian? Yeah. It also points to the high levels of motivation, right? Because he
Yes.
was appointed to work there and he needed to learn the language.
Exactly. Most of them, excluding the girl who was born into a Chinese environment, into a Chinese household, most of them were motivated by music or work. And here it says
He
that
also
he mentions
sorry, the lady who spoke Chinese, that to her Chinese was the language of the home and the language of family. So
yes,
the other side of it was that it was difficult for her to hear the stories about family members and
yes,
loss and
yes, yes.
but at the
Yes,
same time she could feel empathy and she could understand the subtleties.
Yes, it's how important being born into that Chinese household was for her work, right? In this context, and then, well, you have another reporter who was the Berlin bureau chief,
like chop.
And he was a native speaker of German, and he says that he spoke with his parents and son, but he wrote in English because he went. But it says here that his writing language was English because he went to a university in the UK. So he considers himself as bilingual. So let me see if there's any highlight here. No, I don't remember about it. And then, and I came to the title of the article, "This Croydon Accents."
Right.
And
it's not what you expected, right?
It wasn't. No. So people get confused. I like this idea of people getting confused, like, but your surname is Italian, but you speak English, but you have red hair, as it says here. Where are you from? They get them confused. And what I can highlight from this article is how important for these people knowing a second language was. Because as I said before, not only bridges but open doors. And
You're breaking up a bit, Janina. Okay.
yes, can
That's
you hear
better.
me?
I think that's better. Yeah. It could
Okay,
be.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you got what I was just reflecting
You're
on.
talking about how important it was.
Yes, I was reflecting on the whole message of the article, right? Because for all of these reporters, knowing a second language was super important in this in their daily life and in their work.
Absolutely.
And they could relate or with people on a different level. I don't know. There's so many things. I think there's so many details that probably I'm missing out. That is why I will reread it, and I suggest you read it again, because there are so many things of the things that we discussed in class, of community, of language being part of your identity, or making you who you are, and I don't know. I feel I'm missing out many things, but details. But I think that the most important part is that I will stop sharing, because I don't know. I
that
don't see
sounds
your faces.
good.
Um,
That sounds good.
I
So
really like.
it's a very specific professional context, right? Because being a journalist, you have very specific language needs that maybe you wouldn't do if you were I don't know, a doctor, or if you are a scientist, or if you are, I don't know, a poet, or whatever it is, right? So very specific to the world of journalism and investigation and that sort of work. Excellent. How about you, Agus? Would you like to tell us about yours?
Yes, I'm going to share my screen.
Good. You're going to become experts at sharing your screen after this.
Yeah. um, Give me a second.
That's okay. Take your time.
Wait, can you see the article?
Yep, we can.
Okay.
In a PDF format.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I downloaded it so I could highlight some things.
Cool.
Okay, so basically the gist of the article is that students find it difficult to learn languages, like more difficult than other subjects. And some people say that that has to do with the perceived difficulty of learning a language, but others say that it has to do with the obsession of testing, of assessment, obsession with testing and assessment. And they talk about specifically about CSE exams. So, well, different people, I think that basically professors give their opinion on the topic. For example, these, give me a second. Yeah, well, basically that's the idea, but
do you think that there's a cultural who are the people, where are they based in the world? What language do they speak as a first language? What
English, yeah.
Right. So do you think that there's an element related to that? So the fact that English is their first language, and to maybe the way languages are taught, or maybe the perceived need that people have as regards languages? I don't know.
Yes, in fact, it's like I'm going to stop sharing because
Sure, no problem.
It's very difficult for me not to see your faces when I'm speaking. So
But now you have a new version of the of meat.
yeah, I have it, but I don't know. I don't
You
know
should
how
be
to.
able to. Well, never
I don't
mind.
know. I should invite you to my house, Christina, so you can teach me. Okay, so yeah, and in the article, it's like there's like they really state that learning languages is difficult, like,
Mm,
and they talk about some languages being more difficult than others, and that
mm,
caught my attention because I was like, okay, but I think it's like they are simplifying the topic maybe too much because
mm.
like saying okay some languages are more difficult than others, I don't know, I think it depends on your mother tongue and many other factors, so I don't know if you just can say that, like
Right.
state that as a fact.
There
um,
seems to be a cultural presupposition that there are certain there's certain understandings about what learning a language is like in that context, right? That could be more cultural and less. It, okay, first of all, it clashed from what you say with your perception of learning languages, right? You
yeah,
didn't, right?
absolutely.
And then it also has to do with the context of school,
Yeah,
right? So it's not so much a question of people choosing to learn languages, but people having to learn languages,
yeah, and
right?
I think that I do agree with those who say that like the problem, the fact that students cannot like enjoy learning languages has to do with this obsession with testing, because I know, I think that I've seen that, I've experienced that, and this article got me, thinking about my experience with languages, and I've come to realize that in a way I started enjoying learning languages, or specifically learning English, when I started studying at university
Is
mainly.
that right? But then how did you come to choose it?
I mean, I thought that I enjoyed at that time. Like that was, yeah, that was like my perception of enjoyment
Okay,
changed. That's the thing.
all right.
Let's say I did enjoy it because,
Uh-huh.
as you very well said, otherwise I wouldn't be here. Um, but
Well, you never know. You could
you
be
know,
here. You know, you don't.
no, you know when you think that something is good and then you like you discovered something and you said, no, okay, this is really good. Like
It's better.
it's better, yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's the
Uh-huh.
feeling.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's very interesting. What do you think changed?
And
In what ways was it? Is it better than it was? Or in
because
what ways was it good and now better?
because I was used to to attend English classes, and the focus was on grammar, and exercises and all those things. And at that time, I really enjoyed that. But I think it was because I didn't know anything else,
Uh-huh.
you know.
Okay.
And I do find it interesting because I love grammar and everything, but I don't enjoy like filling the blank exercises anymore. Like at that time,
Don't you? Isn't there a part of
yeah,
it that
a
you
bit,
get it?
yeah,
Ah,
a bit,
right.
but
But what
uh,
what would you do different as a teacher to make your students' experience a bit more like what you have now than what you had then?
that's the question, and that's
Ah.
what yeah, that's why I ask myself every day, and I try to do that for every class, and it's very difficult because
Mhm.
people who know me, I always tell them the same thing, that I want you to feel what I feel now, and it's very difficult because I don't know.
Absolutely.
It has to do also. It has to do with who you are and your person, because maybe for me this is really joyful, and maybe for the other person it's not. But well, I
Mhm.
don't know. I just try to do so by basically focusing on my students and not on myself, and not
Aha.
what it's maybe more, what I feel more comfortable doing, or I try to do that.
Okay. Okay.
I don't have
Okay.
the answer.
I know, but at least you have the question, which is a
Yeah.
start, right? That's very interesting. Um, Anything else from the article that you think helps you maybe understand some of these things, or maybe I don't know, maybe that relates to the things that we've talked about?
No, it basically got me thinking, but it didn't give me just like answers,
Okay,
to
maybe
be
that's a good thing.
honest.
Maybe
Yeah,
that's a good thing.
that's at least the beginning of something.
Okay.
And also something that I didn't quite understand was that at the end of the article they talk about the easiest language spoken throughout the world, Esperanto. I don't know what's that.
Ah, okay. You've never heard of Esperanto? You have?
Maybe yeah, like the name
Rings a
rings a
bell.
bell, but yeah.
You're not sure what it is.
Mm.
Well, first of all, what does the article say exactly? Would you like to read it for us so that we know what
Yes,
it says?
it says. The problem of the decline of language learning in schools is disturbing. The fact remains, however, that many languages are difficult to learn. One solution, therefore, would be to revive the GCSE
GCSE.
yeah,
GCSE. Mhm.
that used to be offered in the easiest language spoken throughout the world, Esperanto.
Mm,
Whether one wants to use it to communicate with the millions of speakers around the world or as a springboard to learn other languages, its merits should not be overlooked.
mhm, mhm. Okay, well, let me show you a little bit of a video on Esperanto. I haven't seen it, so I shouldn't be doing this, but since it came up, what I want you to do with this video is I want you to, given the things that we've been saying about how languages evolve, how languages are used, etc., I want you to look at this and tell me if you what you think about this language. Okay, take a look. Uh, let's see.
Kiu vi estas?
Saluton, mi estas Stella, kaj mi estas 27-jara. Mi loĝas momente en Bruselo kaj laboras por la Eŭropa Parlamento. Mi estas originale hungare-franca.
Mia nomo estas Leo Sakaguchi, mi estas studento en la Teknika Universitato en Darmstadt. Mia patro estas japano, mia patrino estas polino, kaj mi naskiĝis kaj kreskis en Germanujo.
Mi estas Douglas Oliveira Biscotto, mi estas dekvarjara kaj mi estas brazilano.
Mi estas Livia Oliveira Biscotto, mi estas lia fratino. Ni estas en Rio de Janeiro, ni venis por Esperanta Brazila Kongreso.
Saluton, mi estas Gunnar Fischer, mi loĝas en Münster, Germanujo.
Saluton, mi nomiĝas Clara, mi estas 19-jara, mi estas franc-hungara kaj mi naskiĝis en Nederlando.
Kial viaj gepatroj decidis instrui al vi Esperanton?
Ĉar miaj gepatroj renkontiĝis per Esperanto kaj ĉiam parolis Esperanton kune, kaj mi aŭdis de Esperantaj amikoj, kotopodo, mi aŭdis la lingvon ĉirkaŭ mi, kaj tiel mi lernis.
Mia patrino estas hungara, mia patro franca. Ili renkontiĝis en Esperanta renkontiĝo, en Esperanta kongreso, kaj li pensis ke unue Esperanto kaj poste mi havos tempon lerni miajn aliajn lingvojn ankaŭ.
Ni sentus nin pli komfortaj kun la lingvo, kun Esperanto, kaj estus poste pli facila por ni, kiam ni studos aliaj lingvoj.
Mia patro lernis Esperanton kelkajn jaron antaŭ mia naskiĝo, kaj li decidis, ke mi kresku dulingve, kaj li parolis Esperanton, nur Esperanton kun mi, dum la unuaj 10 jaroj de mia vivo, kaj ni havis multajn internaciajn gastojn el eksterlando, kaj ni ofte feriumis en Esperantujo.
Kiel homoj reagas, kiam ili ekscias, ke vi parolas Esperanton?
Tion ili aŭdas nur se oni parolas rekte pri Esperanto, ĉar mia ĉefa lingvo estas la franca. Do mi pensas, la unua reago estas ke estas surprizo, ĉar ili tute ne imagas, ke homo povus havi tiun strangan lingvon kiel denaska lingvo. Lingvo kiun iu homo inventis, kiel eblas ke ekzistas infanoj kiuj lernis denaske, sed generale la reago estas pozitiva. Ĉu vere? Do ili interesiĝas pri tio.
La unua demando ofte estis kio ĝi estas. Oni interesiĝas kial, kaj oni kompreneble volas tuj aŭdi kelkajn frazojn aŭ vortojn de mi en Esperanto.
Tial ke ni parolas du lingvojn, ni ricevas nur laŭdojn kaj ne estas malbone traktitaj.
Ĉe Lufthansa, ĉe germana flugkompanio en la inĝeniera departamento, mi havis la kvalifikan interparolon. La homo demandis min, en via papero staras ke vi estas denaska esperantisto, kiel povas...
Okay, we've got enough with that. What do you think? Opinions?
I don't get it.
I'm surprised. I think some words like they sound like Spanish, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And like a mix with Italian, maybe.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. From what the video says, what do you understand? It started out saying that it's a constructed language. So what does that mean?
Someone made it up and passed it on?
Exactly. It's an invented language. You can't, you don't know, we don't know that anybody invented Spanish or English or Polish or Chinese or Japanese or Swahili, right? It's not, languages are not invented by individuals. Somebody sat down in the 19th century and created this language. You can read more about the history of it on Wikipedia, if you or wherever, with a noble aim. What do you think the aim was?
Unite? Unification between people?
Right.
I don't know.
Right. So with the view that different languages were divisive, that they caused misunderstanding, that they caused people to confront each other, that if everybody spoke the same language, maybe we'd get along better. Opinions?
Yeah, you know what? The past last week, I've been thinking that is there any theory that all languages come from the very same language?
Yes and no. You're talking about the idea of a theory of the origins of language, how language originated, right? And for that, you have to look into almost archaeology. There is, in the 19th century, there was a great deal of interest in language reconstruction and going back to the languages that were the sources for the languages we speak now. So, for example, we can trace Spanish and Portuguese and French and Italian and Romanian back to Latin. And we can and Latin was a language that was written, and we've got records of Latin, and we can, because we know about the history of the people who spoke Latin and the people who spoke the other languages, we can kind of know what happened when and how those languages changed. We also know from the similarities from studying languages like English and Dutch and German that they also have similarities, right? So, but we don't have for those a language like Latin, which could be the source language. But through a process of reconstruction, which was very popular in the 19th century and which is used in the subfield that is known as historical linguistics, we can trace back the language to something we call Proto-Germanic. We call it Proto-Germanic because we don't have an actual source where we can... First of all, we know that language change is regular. Okay. Let's see, of language change. You know, you're learning French, right, Saustina? You know that, did they tell you about the rule for the circumflex accents? Did you talk about accents at all and how you know? Because the circumflex accent is not, doesn't have an easy rule to know where it should go, but it does. The word, I can't do the accent in the chat because I don't have the special characters, I don't think. Let me just check to see if I do. Just a second. Let me see. First of all, Janina, you don't speak French, right? So you're not a little bit. Oh, okay. Well, then that's.
I did a year of French, and I had to retake it.
Okay. Well, you know of the existence of the circumflex accents as one of the accents of French. Let me check if I can put it in the chat. I'm looking for special characters. There it is. Fenêtre. Probably not, but let's try it. Let's see what happens if I put it there. Yeah. It does come out. Okay. Fenêtre means window in French, right? And in Italian, that word is finestra. Finestra. What you find is that the circumflex accent appears in all those words where in Italian you have an S. So look at finestra. In French, there's no S, but there's the circumflex accent. Let me see if I can find another example off the top of my head. This is the one I usually remember, circumflex accent. No, it's giving me in another language. Just a second. So, une forêt, even in French, notice that in English, sorry, a forest, yeah, an hôpital, hospital. Yeah, you see that what's missing is the S. Anyway, that's just an example of how language change is systematic and regular. So if language change is systematic, and I'm showing you something from spelling, but the same thing applies to pronunciation, the same thing applies to other areas, that means that we can reconstruct language. And that's how we get to these proto-languages. And through that, we've been able to reconstruct... Wait a minute. a language that we consider to be the ancestor of not only the European languages, but the Indian languages. You may have seen things that look like, oh, I can't find a nice, okay, let's look at this one because it's fairly simple. No, this one's nicer. Is it nicer? Okay, well, let's okay, let's look at this. I'll put it where you're seeing this. Yeah. So you see, what you're looking at is the evolution of the word for from Proto-Indo-European to various modern European languages. Now you can see in which cases you've got Proto-Germanic, Proto-Celtic, Proto-Balto-Slavic, and then you've got the actual languages that are spoken today. But you see, it's like a family tree. Well, this one doesn't look too much like a family tree, but languages are related in clusters, right? So this is something that was done particularly was at the center of linguistic study in the 19th century. It was what people studied when they studied languages. They studied the origins of language. But this is different from this notion of constructed languages like Esperanto. Let me show you a little bit of a video, another video about Esperanto that will be a bit different.
Hello. I guess I'm a bit presumptuous in daring to talk to you in English, a language I always feel as foreign. But I'm glad I have this opportunity to testify about my language experience. And I hope you'll be indulgent if my English is not up to the standard you expect. You see, I've worked for international organizations all over the world, so I know as an insider how communication works, as well in large assemblies as in small expert groups or in day-to-day contact with the population. My approach to the language challenge may be somewhat unusual in that I've been speaking Esperanto since my teens. Esperanto is an international language that developed on the basis of a project launched by a young man in Poland in 1887, and it has spread all over the world. There are today people who speak it in more than 120 countries. Mass media, politicians, most linguists, and the man in the street ignore it completely. But it lives and is in daily use in a segment of the world population. Many people think that the language challenge is met by English, but this is not true. Native English speakers make up only 5% of the world population, and non-natives capable of using it at a good level represent only 5% more. In continental Europe, 90% of the population cannot understand a simple sample of everyday English. When an average Pole and with an average Italian or Korean or Portuguese try to discuss in English, they look like aphasiacs, as if they had suffered a stroke and the language center in their brains had been damaged. They constantly scan their mind for the right word, their pronunciation is poor, they use gestures to make up for the lack of word, they need a few repetitions to understand, and very often they simply give up because the exertion of expressing themselves in a language they don't master is too strenuous. Yet, they studied English for 6 or 7 years, with 4 or 5 hours a week. English teaching is a terrible waste, and the reason is not that teaching methods or teachers are inadequate. It's simply that English is not adapted to the demands of intercultural communication. I've attended hundreds of international meetings held in English, hundreds with simultaneous interpretation.
Okay, I just put the link in the chat. What do you think so far about what this guy is saying?
We have to change careers.
Maybe, maybe not. Do you think he's right?
No.
How many people learn English and how many people learn Esperanto? Is he right about the lack of success of English teaching? Really?
I think so.
Right. But what you notice when you listen to him is how devoted he is to the idea. It's almost religious.
Yeah, I was
right?
thinking that. Yeah.
Okay, there's a conviction there that is almost religious. Let me see if I can find a video which tells you what I want you to see. Let me see if this one works. Hang on. Okay, this comes from an article, Universal Language That Exists, but it never really caught on. Here's why. Wait a minute. Can you hear? Yes? Okay.
Hello there, I'm Philip Gooden. I'm an author. I write fiction and non-fiction, and my latest book is May We Borrow Your Language. There have been attempts to create artificial languages in the hope perhaps that one day they might be universally spoken, but all those attempts have failed. The most famous is probably Esperanto. Esperanto was a deliberate creation, I think, towards the end of the 19th century, and it was a sort of fusion of various European languages, so that the creator, or the theory behind it, was that you took a bit from one language and a bit from another language and a bit from a third and a bit from a fourth and so on, and you had a kind of mosaic of different terms which would somehow appeal to everybody because they would recognize bits of their own language in it. It had some success, and though there seems on the one hand to be a tendency to clump languages together and kind of a greater uniformity as sort of coming together, there's also a tendency in the opposite direction as well. People fight to preserve their own languages, and they develop new forms of the languages that they already speak. So language never stands still. Languages have to grow from the ground up. You know, you can't kind of build them like a house. They actually have to grow naturally and organically out of the ground.
Okay, so here we have different ideas, right? What is the added contribution of this piece?
I think that the last thing that he said, that languages have to grow organically.
Exactly.
There is no point in inventing anything. There is resistance from.
Well, we'll see in a minute that there may be. Thank you. There may be a point in inventing other languages, but not this point, and not expecting people to use languages that are artificial. There are certain artificial languages that are used. Mathematics is an artificial language, but it's not. Yes. Janina.
Oh, sorry, Christina. I have to tell you that I need to leave at 12 today.
That's okay.
Because
that's
something
all right.
Came up at work and I have to leave.
That's all
early.
right.
We're
We're
sorry.
just wrapping this up.
Sorry.
It's okay. That's okay. So there may be a point in creating artificial languages like mathematics, like coding languages. Those are clearly languages that are not used for communication like we're using them. Here we're talking about attempting to create a language with bits of other existing languages, but, and here, this is the article that I'm putting up now, you have reasons why the language didn't fail. Lack of cultural elements and history, psychological reactions to Esperanto, Okay, let's look at this little video.
Arthur Smith, the one show Wordsmith, has already looked at words with strange origins.
That wasn't enough for our Arthur. For the new year, he's moving on to entire languages, kicking off with Esperanto.
Imagine a world where you could travel anywhere and talk to anyone. One universal second language for all. This was the dream of Dr. Ludovic Zamenhof, who invented Esperanto as one step towards creating world harmony. Sadly, we're still waiting on Dr. Zamenhof's aspirations for world peace, but millions of people do speak Esperanto. One of them is Tim Morley, who teaches it.
It came from Poland originally. Dr. Zamenhof lived in a town where there was a Jewish community, but also a Russian community and German community. And there was a lot of fighting between the different groups. The way Zamenhof saw it, part of the problem was that they couldn't talk to each other. If we all had a second language, then we would at least have a chance to sit down and talk about things and hopefully be nice to each other.
But how universal is Esperanto? Will native French, German and Spanish speakers be able to understand some choice phrases? Let's find out.
Mia filo havas hamstron, la hamstro nomiĝas Fred.
Your son has a hamster?
Yes.
And its name is Fred.
What did you pick out there?
It looks like French and English combined.
Spanish.
And Spanish also, yeah.
Mia patro havas hundon. La hundo nomiĝas Roxy.
He's got a dog?
He has, okay. How do you know that?
I don't know, it just sounds like a lot of words you have in European languages.
Okay.
That's kind of the point, right?
I know it from German because I'm a German speaker, and in German it's Hund.
Hund, okay, right.
So, the theory works surprisingly well. But practically, what use is Esperanto? Some primary schools teach the language as part of a pilot project. The belief is that the grounding in Esperanto makes other languages easier to learn.
Hej saluto, kiel vi, nun mi devas iri, ĝis revid.
Parents were sceptical, but after a term's teaching, they're impressed.
I did question when I first found that the children were going to be learning Esperanto. I came in to observe the lessons that children were so far advanced that they were able to use the right grammar for colours and different numbers of objects that they were describing in the class.
I'm rather impressed by this Esperanto. Others have been impassioned. Take me to Milton Keynes, driver. Terry and Anissa met in the Netherlands in 1964 at an Esperanto Congress. Anissa, who's Slovenian, couldn't speak a word of English, and Terry couldn't speak a word of Slovenian. Esperanto was at first a common bond. Then it became the language of love.
Vi kan Linn til å hete knabot igjen.
Yes.
Ser kan de faras.
Yes.
Yeah, mannequin piece on
He came to me and asked if he could carry my case. I said, yes. Do, please.
In Esperanto?
In Esperanto, yes.
And clearly, he's been carrying your case ever since.
Ever since.
And clearly, she's learned English. Right? So, right. So, just one more thing about invented languages before I let you go. This is an article on how Elvish has had greater impacts than Esperanto. These are invented languages too, but these are languages. Remember when we looked at A Clockwork Orange? Yeah. And in that case, what we had was a jargon that the gang used that Burgess had created for the characters, taking elements from Russian and so on and so forth. But Tolkien created a whole language for the elves, right? The elves don't speak English, they speak Elvish. And you can't understand it, like even in the films, right? They speak a different language, okay? But there are many instances of these languages invented for literary purposes, right? Can you think of any? From fiction, I'm saying.
Can you repeat the question, Christina?
Yeah, if you can think of any invented languages that were invented for fiction, for fictional purposes.
What about Game of Thrones?
Absolutely.
Like, I was thinking the one that Daenerys speaks, the
Exactly.
Dothraki.
Exactly. Look, again, I just put something in, but Newspeak was 1984. Let me see. Esperanto is there too. Klingon is another one. Jeez, but this is not a good website. Let me just find a better. Let me just go for Wikipedia, which is going to be tidier than all this.
Klingon is Star Trek, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Klingon is Star Trek, and there are people who claim to speak it, but it was invented for the show. And you've got Tolkien, Star Wars, other literature. Look at these options here. Okay. So, international auxiliary languages are languages constructed to provide easy, fast, or improved communication among all human beings or significant portions without necessarily replacing native languages. And that's where Esperanto, Volapük, and these other languages can be found, right? Esperanto 2, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Then there's these control languages, natural languages that are made simpler, visual languages, ritual languages, engineered languages, others, and then literary languages. And here we've got Klingon, in the interpreter, in Avatar. Avatar also has invented languages. In Star Trek, Vulcan, and so on and so forth. Let's see what this says about Game of Thrones. Oops.
Yeah, it was there.
There it is. Valerian languages and I don't know, whatever, right? So, sometimes these languages are invented by linguists, right? Because they kind of have to work. But the thing is that they never develop a community. They never have. They in some cases there are people like this couple we were seeing in the video just now who try to bring their children up speaking their languages, like that experiment in the school. But it just doesn't go beyond the experiment, okay? Because it doesn't grow from the ground up, because it doesn't develop naturally. The other problem that this idea of an international language that everybody will speak in the same way is that even when you have that initially, then those languages diverge. Look at English, or look at Spanish, and how differently they are spoken in different parts of the world, to the point sometimes of being mutually unintelligible. Now, today we have a great deal of communication, but that's how, Latin diverged and became Spanish, Romanian, Italian, French, and then became mutually unintelligible. It's normal for that to happen, because you start naming your own things. You start developing your own ways of speaking within your community, like teenagers do. Buenardo, Picardo, Insta, no? That's Spanish. And sometimes you hear the kids and you go, what are they talking about? Right? Now, that's not provided for in these invented languages, because they have different purposes, but they don't develop like natural languages. And that's why there's a contrast between artificial and natural languages. So you don't need to worry, Agustina. Now, still, there are political issues to teaching English, as we've said, and to being the representative of the English language in a school community, and to, caring or living with the prejudices that other people have as regards English. And maybe part of our job is to help people realize that our role is not just to teach English, but to teach languages and about languages, and to help dispel some of these prejudices rather than confirm them, right? But then we mustn't be obsessed with, I don't know, learning about the Queen and these things, right?
Yeah, and I think that the thing is that if you focus on that, and just like the superficial part, let's say, you are lost, because
absolutely
one day you realize, I mean, what's the point? What for? That's the question that I ask myself every day. I ask myself lots of questions every day. But
what
yeah,
for what? Tell us the complete question in this case.
Like, what's the point of just teaching that? It just teaching the superficial part of the
a list of words. A
list of words, a vocabulary.
But because that's not what it is about.
Yeah, I mean,
what it is about is you teach a list of words and then they become old-fashioned. You even teach grammar rules. The other day I was supervising an exam, and the exam included the modal ought to, right? And my feedback was, nobody says ought to anymore. I know it's in grammar books, nobody says it. Okay, it's old-fashioned. Now, what are we going to do about it? Okay, maybe we need to know it. Like, we need to know that, I don't know, Julius Caesar was a Roman emperor, or that Shakespeare used the pronoun thou. But will you use it? Well, no. Now, you don't read Shakespeare to... Maybe you want to notice when you read Shakespeare that Shakespeare used another pronoun, because that shows that the language changed. And maybe, you know, reading Shakespeare is as much an exercise in translation as it is in but maybe you read Shakespeare to get at the ideas in Shakespeare. No, and maybe in the process you notice that the language was different back then, and then that's a good thing, because then you get less upset when you notice that your language changes, right? Yeah, people ask me all the time, what do you think about inclusive language? It doesn't upset me, for one thing. People get very upset, but they get upset at the idea behind it, or the idea that somebody can manipulate the language or try to impose something that they don't like. But that's life, okay? That's the way it is. Okay, well, let's call it a day. And let's take the opportunity for next time. We'll have Janina's autobiography and Agustina's autobiography to talk about. And bring any, when you go over the presentations, when you go over the material, have a look to see if there's anything that you didn't understand, that you'd like to go over again. Let's brainstorm some questions that we still have, like this issue of Esperanto came out from the article. But anything else that we may want to answer. Okay, does that sound good?
Perfect. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. And nobody can drop out between now and next time.
No, we won't.
Good.
No, we won't. I think that I will have a lot of questions on Esperanto during the week.
Look it up.
Probably.
And I will have it too.
Most of the videos I found are from these people who are the activists for Esperanto, but there's probably a better video I can find, and I'll probably send it to you on why, you know, from a linguistic point of view, it doesn't work.
Yes, but there are always sides, like in every part of life.
Sure.
We have like
reading
the two perspectives.
And at the moment, I'm reading this book, which is very interesting. Hang on. Let me show you this book. I'll leave you with this. It's called Educated, right? And it's about this woman who lived in a Mormon community, okay? I don't know if you know anything about Mormons.
Yes.
Maybe a bit.
Yes.
Anyway, and it's her describing her life as a child in a Mormon family. Okay. I lived for a period in Montana, which was near Utah, where the Mormons are in the States. And I did go to Utah. I took students to a journalism conference in Utah. But it's very interesting to get an insider's view of these things, right? And you know, that's what fiction and, well, this is not fiction, this is autobiographical, but that's what literature is for, right? So that we can learn about things that we would never come into contact with directly, right? So, you know, I don't know why I mentioned that, but never mind. Okay, so bring ideas, bring questions, and we'll talk some more about them next time. All right?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
See you
Have a
next
nice
time.
weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Next time.